We're good?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to ChDev. This week we have Paul speaking, and I think before we let him get started on another GDPR talk, which I'm super excited about, I know we have at least one, so if anybody else has one, let me know real quick.
Hey guys, just here from ChDevOps. Just want to let you guys know about the DevOps Days event that's going to be coming to Chattanooga first year, November 13th. Paper call is still open, so if you want to talk about culture of DevOps or any DevOps experiences you guys have been having, tools, come display a bunch of Terraform code you've been doing to roll out your application in AWS. It'd be awesome. We do have lightning talks too that are still open, just 5-minute talks, so easy for somebody to come and do. If you want any more details, just hit me up after, and we can talk and get you to the website and everything. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else? Nope. Adam? Nope. All right. We have double food today, so make sure to
Who's
get
excited?
extras. Thanks.
All right, play from start. My favorite thing was, well, let's see if it actually starts. There it goes. My favorite thing was, is it possible to get the volume turned down a hair? Otherwise, I'm going to blast everyone. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so I'll just start by saying, never, ever have I heard someone say, Paul's talking about GDPR, and I'm super excited. You know what I mean? Like, oh, yeah, you've heard it. And so this is something I've really enjoyed learning about and enjoy sharing with you guys. But hopefully, and let me tell you what we're not talking about. Let's start with that. This is not a talk on data security, right? This is not a talk about best practices. There are books that are much more authoritative than what I'm going to share. This is what I've picked up from customers. Like we started AudiencePoint, which is I feel like every time I talk, it's the 30-second pitch. I'm sorry. But we started AudiencePoint to work with major brands, big brands, helping them figure out the ideal time to send an email to each individual subscriber. So for a list of 100 people, interesting, cool, hey, we were all able to pull that off. When you get into the realm of scale with 100 million subscribers that each need to be sent out at the ideal time, each subscriber having roughly 2,000 data points associated to them, it's a pretty big and interesting nut to crack. So to that end, I've gotten to work with some major brands, right? I moved less out of the programming role and more into working with customers, identifying what is it you guys are wanting, how do we get there, how do we build what you're wanting, connecting engineering with sales, connecting sort of executive team all the way through, how do we make this whole thing work together? So this is a little bit about sort of just what I'm seeing in the industry. And it's repurposed. I gave this talk last week to Red Hat, to some marketers there. I tried to remove as much marketing from it as I possibly could to make it a little more relevant. There's still going to be stuff that leaks in, but at the same time, we're all nerds. That's okay. It's a safe place. All right. So where does this whole story begin? I called the talk email marketing and innovation in the age of data security, but honestly, I don't even know that email marketing is key to this discussion other than it's the vehicle we're riding on, right? We all just got on that bus because I work with email, we're all facing the same problems, right? So this is how we got here. There's this concept. There was this belief that there was always more juice in the lemon, at least from a marketing perspective, right? It was always this idea that, well, if we just sent more emails, if we just segmented better, if we did that, we'd be able to drive more revenue. If there was always more, right? And it was like, just go back to that. And I know that that's not just true in marketing, but true universally, right? There's this belief that there's always more. And so when there's this belief that there's more, you keep going back. You keep going back to that place. And so what did that look like? Remember Facebook? I don't know if any of you use Facebook or have heard of this tool. But there was this, there's that quiz for everything, right? And I mean, again, we were all guilty of it. We needed to know what color crayon we were, right? I'm a blue. Who else is a blue? I see one. Like that is the idea. It's like, it was this ridiculous question. We answered 25 questions, and then, it was random. You're an orange. Awesome, right? But then, like, it grew. Well, goodness, I need to know my Beach Boys song, too. What fighting style are you? And we stopped caring even about what the picture was, right? It was just like, I need to know now. And like these, and I know that this wasn't just true on Facebook, but this was where it was kind of like, woo. Which 80s TV show are you, right? Begin game. Who is your true soulmate? It didn't take a long time to find these either, right? Which golden girl are you? Blanche, come on. Which Disney character are you? Which sea mammal are you, right? And the thing was, it wasn't just that a single quiz was all that revealing. It was the overall picture of all of these quizzes together, right? Where we were starting to build these user profiles about you that you weren't even really aware of, or maybe because we're more in the data business, we kind of believed it was probably there, but we kind of looked the other way, right? Those sort of bigger Uber profiles set the table for other things, right? All channels were guilty. I don't just mean social. I don't just mean mobile. I don't just mean email. I don't just mean content. Like every channel that was collecting data was guilty. We're all guilty of wanting more data because we can do more stuff. When we're asked, hey, can you do this? Our immediate response is, our knee-jerk is, absolutely, no problem. We want, like there's that deep thing inside of us that says, we want to be good at our job. We want to help people. So we were like, yeah. And so talking about social, right? Content marketing, clickbait headlines, right? They're engineered to get you to click. I know, all she did was drag her blade across the pool. What happened next blew my mind. For a while, and this is like a month, I just kept putting clickbait statuses on my Facebook account just to get my mom to go, what is it? What did your son do? Sorry, Mom. I don't know. He spilled baby ducks see water for the first time. Can you believe what they do? They probably just swam. You know what I mean? Like, think this is just a normal shed. Just wait till you see what's inside. Probably bodies. Probably dead bodies. Definitely dead bodies. Man creates brain dead. Simple system for cutting your grocery bill. I remember this one. Do you guys remember that one? Man, they were blasting us with that one. So, and when you read these 19 shocking food facts, you will never eat again. And the thing was, so I picked a handful, a sampling of stuff, right? Of content marketing. Content marketing is when we post a story online that's interesting, so you come to it, right? And we want to suck you into it. Pay-per-click and display marketing, that's where we target you with ads based on the data we have about you, right? We say, this is who we want. Or we start looking for look-alike audiences that say, his is what we want, but we want people that look and act like you. Okay, email's the same way, right? And it's not just email, it's this bigger thing, and I know this because I have the conversations with people. It's what you click on. It's what you don't click on. It's when you click and then open. It's when you click and don't open. It's when you click open and engage, right? It's how long you stay on a page, how long you don't stay on a page, right? Like this, and I don't want you guys just to be like, well, I'm not in marketing, so I'm not guilty. Friends, you are the stewards of the data, right? We are all guilty of this at some level. Maybe you're like, I'm just in college, so there's no way. Well, guess what? You filled out those surveys. You know you did. Like, as long as we keep filling out those surveys, they're going to keep doing it. It's part of the thing. And so like I thought this was a perfect slide for kind of where we were at. Security was lax, right? It was like, we were talking about it earlier, like these, I call them dirty APIs, right? A big part of what we do is get data out of sort of these marketing systems and bring it into a normalized state. And the thing was, that data was flowing, right? Buying patterns, lookalike audiences, surfing habits. I don't know if you remember this story. Target, they did a thing, and they were figuring out, they had figured out people who were pregnant before they knew, based off of their buying patterns. I mean, that's freaky. It's, I mean, from a purely nerd marketing perspective, it's cool, but at the same time, it's pretty invasive. I remember getting an email yesterday, and I know emails very well because they come into my inbox, and I scour them. Well, who's their sending agent? Where do they come through? The trace routes, everything, right? It was asking me about my dog, and it knew my dog's name. How is Gus? I am not good with this. I mean, honestly, I put it at the level of like, you know about my kids. I was like, the dog. You're marketing at my dog. Knock it off. And this idea that data was everywhere, right? And it's like, well, we don't even care. There's so much data. The signals were everywhere, right? There was just buying signals and opening signals and all of this great stuff. And again, I'm guessing you've had people, your boss come to your office and go, I heard about this thing. I need you to research it because I think this would be awesome for us, right? Because they're everywhere. But then the breaches came. They didn't just come. They came, and they kept coming, and they kept coming, and they kept coming. I mean, I remember when Target had a breach, like early on in the day, and I remember being like, is Target gonna shut down? Right? It was that big of a deal because they had exposed, but the deal was, it just kept getting worse and worse. And where originally there was this sort of mitigation plan, right? There was this, fear of how it was going to be. The response was, no, we just have a policy. We just follow the policy now. We sent out an email saying, hey, sorry about your breach, right? And we're good. That's kind of how it is now. And the reality is, I gave another talk on GDPR, and that breach slide just kept growing and growing and growing. Finally, I was like, I'm just going to use logos instead of headlines that build on top of each other. The breaches came, and it wasn't just. I think the fear or the wrong thinking here is it's just passwords, right? You can change your password. We're talking about identity. You can't change who you are. You can't change your buying patterns. That doesn't go away. These are targeted attacks. They're not just grabbing random data. Maybe they are. Maybe it's malicious and they're just grabbing passwords. Ha ha, we got them, right? But they're stealing your identity. The who, the what you buy, all of that, and that is much more sort of dark, right? Household income, what kind of pizza you like to buy, the names of your pets. That's a lot more personal. That's something you can't get back. You can change your password, but you can't change your identity. But there's a response, right? Because that data then grew into, and the purpose of this slide is not to get us talking about the 2016 presidential. Actually, no, go, talk. No, just kidding. Okay. The goal is not to talk about like whether you were pro-Trump or anti-Trump or where you fit, but more to say information took a greater role in the last election than any other election up until now. And that's not deniable. right? And it wasn't just our elections, it's Brexit, and it was France, and it was Russia, and it was all of the social networks. I mean, they're still having, yesterday they had Twitter and Facebook in Washington, D.C. at a hearing because it's still relevant, right? Because we don't have a response to it. But that same data that was collected about us based upon which golden girl we think we are or want to be, aspirations, that's being used to target us. Because we have this concept of lookalike modeling. We have this ability to say, because you believe this, 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 and this, we believe that you're susceptible to voting on this issue, right? And we're talking now, this is really personal, right? This is no longer this sort of ethereal world of just like data and data protection. It's like, boom. And so at first, you know, I was talking, at first the brands, it was just, this felt like it was a death punch, right? But then, pretty soon, it didn't take long for them to start releasing their statements. And the statements typically look like this. We're going to talk to our IT department. They're going to fix this. We're going to talk to our marketing team. So they don't do this anymore because they had someone to blame. Because, again, we had some guilt. We had some culpability there, right, in allowing this to get to where it is. And so we are in the box of shame and kind of deserve to be there. I feel like there's an opportunity as well, so stay with me. But then there was the response legislation, right? And this one's growing, and this one's getting bigger and bigger. I don't know where this is going to stop. But let's start talking a little bit through it. Some of these I know very well, some I don't know as well, because they're newer. We start with canned spam. You know, in the US, and then there was the canned spam laws that said you had to opt into email, you know, this setting up this sort of permission-based system. Europe has always had stricter or tighter views of privacy. And so for US companies to do business in the European Union, we had to sort of participate in this, what was called a privacy shield framework. That privacy shield framework has sort of pushed itself over into what's called GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. That's one I know an awful lot about. I've gotten to work with some of the biggest brands in the world and their understanding of what GDPR is and how it impacts them. And we're going to boil that down a little bit today. This is an interesting one. So if you violate GDPR, your business is on the hook for 4% of your annual revenue. Not net, gross, 4% for violation. Now up to, right? Now has anyone hit that? Not yet, nor do people really understand or believe that that's going to take place. This is one of those things that was passed as legislation, but the questions that are coming out of these big brands is it enforceable, right? At this point, no one's really pushed it that far. The second one goes over that line, you know there's going to be a flood of enforcement, right? So we don't know what the overall impact of that is. The big piece there is consent, your ability to say, I want to do this. Giving digital subscriber rights, and we'll look at that here in a little bit. Our friends up in Canada released Castle. Castle was it was a marketing-based sort of, here's how we interact with customers. Here's our contract with Canadian citizens. And then recently, and I would say like a month and a half ago, California passed their own privacy legislation. Now, what you're probably thinking is, well, we start with this big global map. Okay, we cut Europe out. We're probably fine. We still have the whole US, which is a big one, right? Well, then we go, okay, cut out Canada too. Okay, so California, we got to remove everyone in California, right? And that pie keeps shrinking smaller and smaller of how we've been doing it, right? And here's the thing about these legislation. It's not just this thing that says, if you market to European Union citizens, you're held responsible. Here's how it works. If you are an American company and you send an email to someone in France, you're culpable. if you are an American company and you send an email to a French citizen in the United States hanging out because they're on a work visa, you're culpable. If you have an American citizen who has opted into your program, whether, again, pay-per-click, it doesn't matter the model here, because this includes your application usage too, right? If you send an email to that person, an American citizen in France, you're culpable. Okay, so that's a big deal. But the thing is, it's not just that. We're talking about in Canada too. Same thing. If you're sending emails to Canada, the same rules apply that I just described in GDPR. Same thing with California. So now we're getting to this place where it becomes this lowest common denominator. We all have to sort of agree on these terms of here's how it works. Now, legally, are you bound to right now? Probably not. But at the same time, I think there's an opportunity here. And I know this expectations haven't reduced with all this going on. If anything, they've increased. We have a higher expectation for revenue. We have a higher expectation for progress, right? Features, all of that. There's more placed upon us today than there ever has been before. And so it starts to feel like this, right? With fewer tools, there's greater regulations, subscriber distrust, stricter security, tighter timelines, more standards, again, email, sorry. And the other side of that balance is we expect more revenue. This is what it feels like, right? This is, in the story, this is where we start to switch. See, because within this, there's an opportunity. Every time we hit this, the need for our economy to continue moving hasn't changed. The need for revenue hasn't changed. Just means we need to be a little more creative. If anything, I would make a really strong argument that there is an opportunity here unlike any opportunity we have faced before. At least arguably. Whether it is or isn't, man, we can argue about that on Reddit. But so in reality, that opportunity looks like this, right? Revenue's never going to change. Those expectations are not going to change. They're always going to sit out there, and they will always be there. However, there's this response to that where we can run and hide, or we can start saying, yeah, no. There is, like, we need more creative solutions. We need, interesting. We'll see where that goes. We need more creative solutions, the ones that haven't been built yet, right? That's not the right slide. I don't know why that's there. Anyway, we'll switch. Oh, I see. No, I'm good. I'm good with that. I'll roll with it. PowerPoint, Paul killed it. What? So this has happened before. Now, arguably, I would believe there's a bigger market here. There's a bigger pie to deal with. But this has happened before. And it started back in 1993-94, my freshman, sophomore year of college. Seattle Pacific University, Mosaic came out. This is the coolest thing ever. And I was the only person on campus that had it with my Mac, Power Mac 6160 AV, single mouse button, right? And I was surfing the internet on a 14.4 modem that I had figured out how to do a TS slip connection so I could connect. Mosaic then switched into Netscape, which then kind of grew into, you had Internet Explorer come out immediately, and you saw the versions. But what grew very quickly was the browser wars. And there also grew was the need to build for those browsers, right? And I remember I have been paid a lot in my history of programming now to build for things like, I need a split between Microsoft Internet Explorer 3.2 and Netscape 4. Holy Lord, right? We want this innovative, interactive website, but holy smokes, man, those are not built. They don't know each other, right? But that was the beginning. There was this thing called the web, and I remember as a sophomore interviewing with Expedia, right? And maybe I should have taken the job. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? But that was the beginning, right? That there was an opportunity that was the web, and we responded. And out of that grew things like Amazon, right? And browsers. And even email clients, right? That grew out of that era. We wanted to move out of just command line and into the graphical user interfaces. What's up, right? We were no longer using Pine. We were using Outlook and Outlook Express and Firebird. Also at that time was portals. There was this big, I remember when they were like, Netscape, who had just released this browser, everyone believed they had released server-side JavaScript, which no one believed could be a server-side language. And then they come out and they're like, we're now a portal company. And I remember people going, Netscape cannot do anything wrong. Which they didn't, right? Clearly. But there might have been an overreach there, right? And I remember the dot bomb, 97, 98 roughly. No, it was 98, 99. Like, there was so much money that had been invested in this sort of traditional architecture and way of doing things that it was overspent. And I remember all of my engineer friends that were way smarter than me had lost their jobs. And in comes Web 2.0. Now, there was a cooling off period. And that part of it was we overplayed our hand. There was things like e-bags, right, where we're the electronic source for all of your bag needs. Oh, that's a ridiculous concept. Now, maybe not. In retrospect, bags are cool. But at the time, like, the marketing spend was way exceeding the need, right? But Web 2.0 came in. The whole concept there was sharing, right? It was social networks. This is when Friendster and MySpace and all of these things were kind of working together, but it was all about how we work together, right? And so we were getting smaller, more dedicated tools like Flickr, which also introduced the idea of misspelling words as our company names. Just drop the E. No one cares. It's hip. We're a Web 2.0 company. Screw you all. We'll do what we want. Because we were out of domains, and no one cared about that TLD, right? Then the next iteration was the mobile web, right? And now we're getting a little more sort of recent history where we go, okay, yeah, that's right, you're right. Where we had, it started with, goodness, I would even say Palm. Palm was kind of our originator. From there, it grew into BlackBerry, another sort of early entry. But then you had the iPhone and Android, and that, again, we grew into this another war, how I'm a this and you're a that. But the reality was, and I remember sitting in Connections, an event for ExactTarget, which is now part of Salesforce, and talking about how we need to make an app for everything. And at the same time, Steve Jobs was saying, we've got an app for everything, right? And the idea was there was lots of money to be had if you built mobile, right? And I'm sure some of you had people come in and sit down, maybe it was your college professor, you really need to think about building for those mobile clients. I think that's going to be the future. And it was, right? But it hasn't stopped, but it's changed. I would say the emphasis has shifted off of mobile and into other pieces, right? And that's where I'd say right now we're kind of coming out of what I'd call sort of a cloud computing space, right? Where you've got Google Docs, and it is about, but it's software as a service, platform as a service. This idea that you can log in and someone else handles all of the magical security, right? It's all just there. It's perfect, right? And so that we're getting these smaller, more dedicated apps that are services-centric, REST-based. It's all magical, right? And it's good. But what I spent the first 20 minutes of the talk talking about was this situation where we've arrived at. And if we don't start taking security seriously, this will disappear. And so I believe, and I'm saying I think the secure web is next, right? And it was brought about because of us, because of what we did. So the first rule of the secure web is security, right? That's where we have to start. You guys are all smart. You're already doing things that are secure. Continuing doing those things. If you are not doing those things that are smart and secure, stop it! You're ruining it for the rest of us. We only have one punch bowl and you just dropped a turd in it. But we have to build secure stuff, right? So what does that mean? And I told you this is not a talk about security, but fields, field types, understanding sensitivity of data, PII, PHI, personally identifiable information, and personal healthcare information. Understanding how all of those pieces interact. Understanding how your stuff is locked down, keeping track of it. It's the DevOps piece, right? Be paranoid, right? That's the first rule of sort of a secure web, is to be paranoid, to make sure that our data is secure. But the second is consent. And this is the piece that legislation has brought about. And this is, I think, probably one of the most enabling, paradigm shifting. Look at how many buzzwords I'm throwing out there. Sort of changes. And I think this is where the opportunity sort of becomes. So as part of GDPR, we now need consent from customers to be able to do things. So like, instead of just saying, hey, I'd like to receive your email, we have to say, I'd like to receive your email, and I want my data used at AudiencePoint for send time optimization purposes or personalization. The attorneys are doing that. Thank you, attorneys, right? But the idea is we need explicit consent. You need now to know when someone consented to receive your marketing or your whatever, even interacting with your application. Your cookies, you know when you come to a site now it says, we use cookies. They're keeping track of you, and they're saying they consented to use these cookies on this date. It's kind of a deed to the property. That's how this consent thing works now. If you don't have that deed, you're not allowed to have the data. And this is a less exciting slide because there's a lot of data on it. Digital subscriber rights. This is a huge piece. DSR. I had a conversation with Microsoft Tuesday about this. I had a conversation, this spends a lot of my time, but digital subscriber rights, here's the deal. You as the consumer now have rights. You say, here is my data. I have a right to access all of my data. I have a right to change my data. I have a right for all of my data to be forgotten. Right to erasure of data. Right to data portability. I want to be able to download it and bring it with me. I want to restrict the processing of my personal data. I'll give you my data, but I need to know how you're going to use it, and you don't get to do it the way I don't want you to do it. Right to object to the processing of data. Right to not be subject to a decision based solely on automated processing. That's a big one, right? Because there's lots there. Consent will need to meet high standards. These are just kind of talking points. They have to meet high standards, right? It can't just be, I consent to receive your email. There is a very specific expectation on what consent should be. It must be unambiguous, and you have to agree to it. You can no longer put a checkbox up that's pre-checked, because that's a violation of these agreements, right? And you need the ability to withdraw consent at any time. Individuals must be told that they have the right to withdraw consent. And consent presented as take it or leave it will not be valid. These are big issues, right? But this is the secure web. This is the next iteration, right? You have to have a legal reason to have data. And here are the ones that are spelled out in GDPR that you're allowed to have. Consent, that's the first one. I give you permission. The thing is now you're inviting people to use it, to use your data. Or you have a contract. Hey, I am agreeing to use your product. You are agreeing to use this. Everything how my data is being used is spelled out in that contract. Or legal compliance. In order for me to be able to do this, and this, which you agreed to, I have to use your data this way. Therefore, I'm being compliant. Vital interests of a human, life or death. I need to know what his phone number is because he's trapped in a car in the water, and I need to call his cell phone, something, right? That was a stretch. I'm sorry. I could have prepared for that one a little better, I think. But vital interest. So that's, again, okay, a public interest, legitimate interest. This is a dangerous one, and every nerd I know on GDPR is like, just steer everyone clear of the concept of legitimate interest. I have a legitimate interest to be able to look into that. Well, no, you don't, right? But it's spelled out. So, and it'll be interesting to see if some of these larger companies, the Facebooks, the Googles of the world, camp out on that. If so, and they really, really do camp out on this, it's going to sort of nullify the whole GDPR concept. But that's okay. We'll get there. And then EU member state reasons, crime and justice, new purposes. So much danger here. We're doing new cool stuff. Because we're not just It's not just security we're talking about, and that's where I wanted to, this is not just data security, right? It's a change, it's a shift, it's a paradigm shift. You no longer own their data. The business no longer owns the data. Just because you put up a form and collected it does not mean it is yours. It is the customer's data. They still own it. They are lending it to you. You become a steward of that data, right? Your job is now to protect that data. It's to tell them how you're going to use it. It's going to be to improve their life, right? So it is a paradigm shift. We're no longer thinking about things just from the perspective of data security. It cannot be that way. And this is, I thought, maybe an important slide to kind of talk through. Just that I think the immediate thought perspective is, well, goodness, let's just take the old models, we'll slap more security on them. We could just, we'll make them GDPR compliant. It doesn't work. I was just on a phone call this morning. I can't share names because it's quiet. In our space, there are enterprise email marketing companies. One of them is not GDPR compliant. So they had to shift their entire European operation over to another email company. Not a small undertaking. It may make the news, it may not, don't know. But the point is, one of those companies took the perspective of, well, it's going to be fine. You know, we'll tweak our existing models to make it work. And the other one said, no, we have to embrace this concept of sort of consumer rights, digital subscriber rights, consumer sovereignty, that piece that the customer has, it's their data. So there were consequences there that were outside of that 4% of revenue loss. So I say, instead of looking at this as a challenge, it's like, or you know, our old way's broken. I actually think this is an exciting time. We are in an industry. Now, I was talking earlier about sort of the iterations. I would say our industry has grown. So though this may have less impact on the overall, the size of the pie is that much bigger now, right? So because there are so many people involved in the internet, their everyday form of life, whether it's mobile or desktop or some tablet or cloud, it doesn't matter. There is a lot more there. So I actually think with everything that has come up to this point, and I'm saying this both to me, I'm saying this to the city of Chattanooga, I'm saying this to those here in the audience, I'm saying to people on the interwebs, the deal is we have an opportunity to lead the way. I mean, truly, and that's pretty remarkable from the perspective of little old Chattanooga, right? We are sort of a hub of innovation here in the Innovation District, in the Innovation Building, talking about innovation, right? We have an opportunity to lead the way on what this is going to look like and be. And with that opportunity comes, I think, a lot of money, as all of these changes often do. But to do that, we need to do better. We need to be more engaging. And we'll talk through this. These are the, you know, these build cool businesses. How's that? I just summarize all of those. Take your collective smarts, get together in small groups, and come up with cool ideas. How's that? Okay, good. But the opportunity is to build secure applications where the user is in control of their data. It will shift how we use the internet. I don't think I like the next slide. We're probably not going to stay there very long. We have to do better, right? Okay, good. Here's the other thing. You know, we talked about signals earlier, and one of the things I've run into from a lot of folks is it's just fear and loathing and just, it sucks, we can't do our old way. Man, all of the signals are still there. We just have to be more creative. We have to bring more of an A game. We have to collect. So sometimes that means being more patient and finding that, right? Being more creative. Sometimes it's going to mean having to spend more. But the reality is, at the end of the day, if people will pay for it and it is a good idea, it will land. If you have the right team, right everything, it may land. Did I say will land? I mean, it may land. But honestly, that's what we're all struggling for, is the opportunity to hear it might happen, right? Oh, and there's the end. That was a weird ending. I thought I had another slide. It's okay. It's kind of timing where I wanted it to end anyway. Here's the deal. GDPR, the California privacy law, these are the beginning. It's going to continue to grow. And whether or not Facebook and Google and all of these brands are able to sort of squeeze it, make that implied consent bigger, we'll see. That'll be determined. But the reality is this is something that needs to happen and will happen, whether it's through this iteration or the next. We can either sit by and let the waves pass us, where we do it how we've always done it, or we can embrace it. And we can say, and that's what we've done at AudiencePoint. So there you go. I think there's time for questions. Look at that. And as an expert, I'm super excited about this talk.
Anybody have any questions for the expert? I have one.
Okay,
is the mic on? Okay. So have you pulled out your information from any of the websites that you use, like, say, Amazon, to see what it looks like?
I have. I've downloaded it. I mean, there's always interesting information. And the other thing is, GDPR only came into effect May 24th, right? So, and because we're in the US, the need for compliance just wasn't there. So I'm getting sort of Me Too stuff online. But yeah, there is interesting stuff. Nothing that's noteworthy, like, let me tell you. My dog's name is Gus. Yeah.
Any more questions?
One of the points on the rights of the individual was that individuals have the right to not have a decision made
On automated processing.
right. So everything's about AI now, which is
Right.
this a train wreck?
The question is AI a train wreck? If one of the digital, if one of the digital subscriber rights is the right to not have automated processing take place about you, I think the answer is potentially. I don't think it's clear that it's 100%. Man, if you go down that path, you're screwed. And in the same way, so there's ways to get around this, right? And so instead of using PII, sort of obfuscating to the point of not knowing who the person is, so that you still can and match on those pieces. I mean, I've had a lot of arguments with really smart folks about even that, where some folks are like, no, you can't even do that. Where our understanding of the legislation is that, if you get it down to that point of sort of ID, you're probably okay. But again, the right to sort of opt out of that's kind of the key. So it's not saying you can't do it. It's just consent, right? Am I giving you consent to do that? And you'll see that start showing up on opt-in forms. I consent for my data to have automated decisions made about me. Again, it's all about, if I'm going to steal from you, at least let me tell you I'm going to steal from you. I see two. Yeah.
The AI that is doing the processing becomes sentient, and does it have rights as well?
I love that you asked that question. The question was, what if the AI becomes sentient and does it have rights unto itself? The reason there it is. I actually wrote a blog article about that. Oh, let me see if I can find it. Because it's funny, right? The whole concept is the consent, and what got me started on this little kick, because I thought it was funny was, I was opting in, and the only opt-in language there was that I'm not a robot, okay? And I thought, that's really funny. So I wrote an article about it. Not Salesforce. AudiencePoint. Then you'll know all of our customers. Blog. There we go. Maybe we'll get to it. We'll see. Anyway, the answer is there are actually some rights for robots, but not really. And honestly, you're allowed to market to robots as much as you want. There's really no opt-in language. Well, never mind. I don't think we're going to. Oh, I didn't connect to your internets here. Oh, no, I am. We'll see. Maybe it'll come up. Go ahead.
Do you know of any companies that are kind of supporting individuals in finding out who has all of their data and how in giving, I know I've probably consented to all sorts of things, just by clicking, and
Right.
I'm just curious. It seems like a business opportunity somehow.
Well, you're probably right, and this is kind of where I was getting. So I think the question was, is there almost like a clearinghouse of rights you've opted into or not? At this point, not that I'm aware of. I have been approached. Oh, maybe I should hide whatever is on my Slack. That's probably a good plan. So I haven't heard that. I've been contacted by organizations out of EU that's willing to represent customers in their fights against folks like us. So they'll represent us. We've been contacted by a lot of people, but not what you're specifically talking about. It's kind of an interesting idea, right? Is if there was a place that you could view all of your opt-ins in a single place. Cool. Good idea. There you go. My contact info, it's pretty easy. It's paul@audiencepoint.com. Feel free to email me. My Twitter is ShrinerP. Actually, everything I do is probably just ShrinerP. So, and I'm also on the ChDev Slack group. That's what was up. It was not a bunch of email nerds. There you go. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Everybody give Paul a round of applause.
Super excited to hear about GDPR.